Wake the farm up.
What's up, y'all? We're down here, Materia Medica, in the nest. Wake the farm up. We're getting into some fun down here today. Trying some different wild food goods. Right now we're sitting with Kara. Kara just came in here. She's like, we're drinking some of that figgy coffee.
So hey, Kara, tell us about yourself. So you're from what I understand, you're like a therapist, and you work in, like what kind of therapy work do you work in?
Yeah. So my name is Tara Wilkins, and I currently work with a reservation remotely. So I specialize in trauma therapy. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I have a certificate in trauma counseling. So that's my jam.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, like, what are some things that brought you on the journey to, bringing that service to the community?
Yeah, I actually got my bachelor's degree in education, and I found that when I was working with kids, I was really drawn to the kiddos that really struggled behaviorally. And I really struggled to find a job, and I just wasn't happy in education. So I took that skill set and I started working in a state hospital, and I was like, this is it. This is my jam, right? And I loved it. And so I ended up getting my master's degree in social work, and I've just been living that journey for the last several years, and it's been incredibly rewarding.
Nice.
Yeah.
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 And so this place we're in, the Nest, is it a place that you've worked with this place before? I'm very new to what the Nest is, and it's amazing, like all the things I've walked through to get to this little spot here. And
Yeah, so I started my own healing journey and taking my health into my own hands about 4 years ago. And so that kind of put me on the path of where I am now. And a couple of months ago, I really wanted to look into acupuncture. My schedule's super tight. And I found Karen, and they do community acupuncture here on Friday. So I come out, every other Friday for acupuncture, and I've gotten to know Karen and some of the community here, and it's just been really great.
Oh, that's sharp.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, Elf. Yeah. So some of what are some of the other therapy techniques that you've worked with before? I know before we got hit the record mic, you mentioned microdosing. And I know that's been a therapy that's been explored more in the more recent contemporary times. So yeah, I'm curious about that and other techniques that you might work with more that are...
Yeah, so when I started, I wanted to expand my skill set into trauma work several years ago, because I found that, all the research and the things they were suggesting just really weren't working. So I started digging, and I found some research on the use of psychedelics and psychedelic-assisted therapy. And it opened this door for me and my own healing and helping other people heal, and it's been incredible. So, I also focus a lot on holistic health, so diet and energy work. I'm a Reiki practitioner, incorporating the spectrum of woo, as I call it, into my work. So, yeah, those are some things. Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Yes. Yeah, I was in a session last week with a client, and they were talking about something, and I was talking about astrology, and I'm like, this is great work I get to do, right? I get to bring in all these other things into this space, and yeah, it was great.
Help find meaning and purpose to the things that are in our lives. And
yes, take back our sense of control that sometimes we feel like we don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound therapy. Have you worked with sound therapy much?
Yes, I love going to sound therapy sessions. My partner actually made a vibroacoustic sound therapy bed that we use at home, and sometimes I'll get a little... Sometimes sessions I do are heavy, right? I work with people with a lot of generational trauma and a lot of trauma, and I'll go lay on that, sound therapy bed in between just to kind of hit the reset button on myself. So I love sound therapy.
So cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a sound, like, what was it? A sound therapy bed
Yeah.
that your partner made, and like, is that something like how does that work? Like, I'm intrigued. Is that something I should make?
So we were looking into these sound therapy beds that were upwards of like $5,000, and he's very technologically savvy and gifted in that. And he's like, I can make that for so much cheaper. So that's what he did,
Yeah.
and he, and so we will. He put I don't know. He put these things on there that cause vibration, tactile transducer or something. I'm probably saying that wrong. I really don't know, but so
It
he
sounds
made it.
good. I
It
like
sounds
it. Yeah,
great.
some electrodes and things like that,
Exactly.
and some animositors and.
Yeah, and so it creates different vibrations at different hertz for healing. And we, put some really good quality headphones over, add a weighted blanket, and it's just magic for however long you want to lay there and let the vibrations work.
Cool.
Yeah.
Some of the things I've seen, it's interesting, are these nature sound bath things that are outside, and they have the giant things that lead up to your ear, like these giant cones that you can craft out of any kind of material, really, but then you just lay in it, and it makes the sounds of the world around you just that much more louder and intensified. And
Nice.
I like that kind of concept. So I'm curious about sound beds and
Yeah.
sounds, and that's an interesting therapy for sure.
I would really like to find a local drumming circle too, because that sounds incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine they're around. Just you need to find somebody that's holding a beat down,
Agreed.
jump
Agreed.
in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Karen Lynn just jumped in here by us. So that's number 2. Checking number 2. What's up?
Hey,
How
fun
are
day.
you?
Such a high vibe today.
There's so much energy in here. I was explaining to Kara I hadn't been into the nest, and how, it's a wonderful day to be in here. There's so much going on. I can see all the different little businesses that are working together to create a community here.
Absolutely. It's outstanding. It's so fun.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So tell us about it. Tell us about your aspect in here, the Materia Medica.
Oh, it is. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, she's working right now, so she's got to make sure she sends some faxes simultaneously right now too.
So with Materia Medica started, the herbal side of it started 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago. So I've been a licensed esthetician for 21 years, never vibed with typical spa. It felt very not genuine. Let's take advantage of people's insecurities and sell them synthetic chemicals for their skin. And
Whoa,
it's
yeah.
just not, no, our skin's a living, breathing ecosystem. We don't need man-made chemicals that come from a lab. So anyway, went into
But they've been tested, right?
But they've been
They've been tested.
They've been dermatological tested. I know. And then went into studying food as medicine with the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and really started working with regenerative farmers, getting really down into soil science, helping people learn, getting out of grocery stores and the politics of food, which we all understand the politics behind those aisles, and then more into local growers. Let's go meet your local farmers markets. Let's go meet your local farmers. Support them and not the politics behind big ag and big food, which we know sucks and creates disease. And then went into herbalism.
Yeah, I mean, it's been tested. It's been tested to show that it does that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty consistently doing some strange tricks to us, and it's really empowering to see what your community is pulling together here too. Really beautiful. There's a lot of excitement in here, and it's fun how farmers, growers, food sourcers, foragers, how that trickles down into situations like this where community can see each other and come together and create things together from that, and have space where people can come and meet people like Kara who are offering therapies, and you have these different rooms in here that I was hearing you offer acupuncture here.
Yeah, we do community acupuncture parties with herbal mocktails and fun music.
Super fun. It's such a
And
great
then we're
So
getting ready
sharp.
to do community reflexology. That's going to be super fun. And then we have a licensed naturopathic doctor. And Verve Health is getting ready to start their functional medicine nurse practitioner who doesn't love the business model behind functional medicine, which is why they're going to fit here. Because they love
They wanna
earth-based. They want earth-based. They want foundations of health. They love herbalism and like the whole wild-crafted plant herbalism. You know what I mean? So closer to nature. That's what we need.
Yeah.
We don't need
I think
lab science.
I like when I hear people reimagining these things. It's a concept that's kind of like a fresh pivot or view on what we need to do in these times for me right now. It's just like having, like taking these systems and flows in our society that exists in our communities and try to reimagine them together and create new things that are for the
Absolutely.
people and for the earth.
And people are doing it, Andy. Like, look at this.
I'm so excited to meet so many people here.
Yeah, everybody that's here, they're here because they live their life like us. They want to live closer to nature. And they want to keep learning, and they want that sense of community. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's so special. You have a wild food raw bar, that's like out of some like visionary dream of mine. I had like many times while sleeping, just like how wonderful of a situation. And I was so curious to see how you put this together. And it's it's really coming together. It's a beautiful presentation. What's up, guys?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I just think that we need to take our food to a different level. We have local foods, we have regenerative foods, we have the whole adulterated term organic now, which we really know doesn't mean much. Hey, Daryl, come over.
Come on over, Daryl.
Come on over, Daryl.
Hey, look, we even got
Our Daryl just got here. He's the state of Indiana's most amazing, badass Ayurvedic practitioner. But what we were saying is that if we can just get people to not only support local farmers, regenerative soil, getting out of that, but then also understanding how to eat your weeds, right? We need to learn how to eat weeds and not kill the weeds because they are more nutritious. I mean, just a dandelion alone, something that's so common that people kill with the same pesticide. So you've got a dandelion that heals the same diseases that the pesticide causes.
Right.
Right? So
We're
it's just
like,
getting people to not be so disconnected, and they're not, are they? No, they're not. Yeah. I'm talking to you.
Yeah, Daryl, what do you
Daryl.
think of Hey, everybody, welcome Daryl in here.
Hey friends, is the mic on? We good?
Oh, no, it's not. Check mic
Okay,
4, checking mic 4.
okay,
Now we got
now
4
we can
mics
hear
alive.
me.
How you feeling, Carrie? You still feeling good in here?
I'm
Maybe
good,
down a
I'm
little
good.
bit. There it is.
It's on.
Yeah, we're good. Hey friends, hey guys, happy to join in. I'm Daryl. Karen's talking about being connected, disconnected, and heck yeah, I mean we want to be connected. The thing that I always think about when I went to that regenerative farming panel where you were there and Aaron was there is like, that phrase, like it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. When you go to the grocery store, it looks like an orange, it smells like an orange, it is not an orange. And especially if you're looking at something that's like packaged, like they say is made of these ingredients, but for one, they're just lying. And for two, they don't tell you how much processing goes into that. And so by the time you eat it, the life force that is left in that food is just gone.
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 That's what I love about the Native American approach to the way they looked at food. Everything that they looked at was the energetics of food. So it was, they looked at chicken soup was made from a chicken because they looked at the energy of the chicken. It was lively, right? Full of energy, lively, running around, always scratching, always foraging. And then they paired it. What did they pair it with? Medicinal herbs and roots that they dug up from the ground to heal and nourish themselves. So what Daryl just said is that's just it. It's the energetics of the food that we eat.
I remember when they first started talking about clean meat. which hilarious that they called it clean meat. But I'm talking about like the bioengineered lab meat.
Of course.
Like
of
Petri
course.
dish
So
circles.
clean.
Yes. And my friend was like, I would try it. And I begged him. I said, bro, please never eat that.
No.
Yeah, it's fascinating thought for me recently, thinking about how I'm probably more comfortable still, and I'm trying to grow, and evolve, but I'm more comfortable currently taking a knife and cutting open a sealed Ziploc bag than I am gutting a deer personally. Wasn't raised gutting deer, so it's like something I've tried, and it's very challenging for my mental state or something, my gut. It's, I try to, support people who are hunters and have a long family history with that, to eat deer meat and whatnot. But I do think it's fascinating, I'm like coming through this plastic era, where everything's plastic, there's microplastics in me, and like we're taught that sterilized plastic is safer to touch than like, a dead deer. And that's just where we're at. We're growing and evolving and try to have patience with that. And it's like Karen was mentioning the first people, and I know around here when I first started eating meats after years of raw foods and being a vegetarian, it was the deer meats that I went to first, and it was after reading about the first people here, the Shawnee, and how there was a large group of them that wouldn't eat chickens, cows, goats. They would only wanted to eat the animals that roam free without fences. And to me, that's like a whole nother thought and level of like, okay, yeah, there's so many fences now. Like, how do we get to that level? But just the interesting perspectives that I remember reading, they shared about watching these pioneers be slaves basically for their food. Like they would, have to do all this like work. Meanwhile, these guys were like hanging out, sharing poetry around the fire, and then going and catching, an elk and, letting the elk run around and share poetry with other elk while it was doing its thing. And it makes a lot of sense to me. And, our food really does kind of tap into our dream zone even. When I was doing all raw foods years ago, most of my fellow raw food comrades were eating mostly stuff from tropical places. And I was foraging. I was eating those dandelions and like finding those things that were in the moment in our seasonal flows around us. And I felt like that made me dream about things locally. While they all like had a lot of intense dreams about going to tropical places all the time. That must be really challenging to like be made up of the tropics but not be there.
I know. But not be there.
Yeah.
How did you go from raw foods to vegetarianism to wanting to eat deer?
I think that connection with the earth, really, like connecting into it, listening, and like trying to listen to what my instincts were, connecting with ancestors too, like finding that I was having deficiencies in like vitamin D, and was able to feel a difference when I started incorporating eating some fish and things like that. So, yeah, I just wanted to explore and like move beyond my own personal convictions and dogmas and, be a little bit more open. Little things like in the raw food world, like tomatoes, I guess their anti-cancer properties come out when you heat them up. And there's a lot of things like that with mushrooms, their beneficial health properties don't even really become bioavailable unless you heat them up. Like you can chew on turkey tail mushrooms all day long and it'll give you some fiber and some substance, and some minerals and nutrients, but not all the kick butt, medicinal properties. So try to find and, see what all the little loopholes are in nature. I feel like every species has like some kind of loophole, or there's some kind of, there's a snake that probably has legs or something. You know what I mean? It's like there's like something that defies what we think this certain group of plants or species may be that is related to them or something. It's and it's just like that with like foods and flows, and it's always changing. And what was a seasonal food last year, it's a different season this year. So, Daryl, I'm talking a whole lot. I hear myself talk a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious, so you, Karen mentioned what like your background was when you first popped in, and will you clarify on that a little bit too?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to add one thing to what you were
Yes,
saying,
please.
which I think is really cool. So I learned this from Dr. John Dillard, and he shared that deer, they eat leaves in the summer, and they eat bark in the winter. And so that's their seasonal eating pattern. And if you feed a deer leaves in the winter or bark in the summer, that deer can die. So that internal microbiome shifts dramatically for them season to season. And he uses that as an example to say, like, yeah, like we're humans, we're more adaptable, but still, like we are adapting very much so with the seasons. You know, in some seasons, we're much more apt to digesting certain sugars, certain meats, things like that, you know, based on availability of what we grew up with, what our family lineage grew up with, what our ancestors grew up with, right? It's all evolutionary.
Yeah, like those ancestral things that pass on. I mean, they're physical, like our microbiology in our guts. You know, it comes from that ancient grandmother who chewed on some leaf and put it into your other ancient grandmother that was her child. You know, and that, like, you know, those exchanges of microbial activity is like these vessels of thousands, millions of things.
Absolutely, everything is embedded. And the further it goes, it's still relevant. It just becomes more subtle. So yeah,
you're
hopping
fascinating.
into-
Man. You're fascinating. Yeah, tell us about you.
Thanks. So I'm an Ayurvedic physician. Are you familiar with Ayurveda?
I'm savvy.
Okay, so Ayurveda is a natural holistic medical science from India, and it's this beautiful, beautiful science that is based on the natural laws of biology. And so the way I like to describe it is that there are physical laws that the universe is governed by, like laws of gravity or laws of thermodynamics. And in the exact same way, our bodies are also governed by biological laws. You know, in the same way that if I drop my phone,
Gravity,
gravity takes it.
Yeah, we can't vote to repeal that.
Exactly. You can't repeal gravity. Gravity doesn't care if you believe in gravity. It doesn't care what your opinions are, right?
Right.
And so our biology is the same way. Our cells are governed by laws. So there are laws of biology, laws of physiology that govern not just you, but also me, you, dogs, cats, dolphins, plants, literally anything that is alive. And so Ayurveda, it means the science of life, which when I first read that, I thought it was like poetic. Like, oh, that's nice, like science of life, like cool mythology, right? And then 2 or 3 years into my journey of just totally falling in love with it and realizing I was always just continually blown away by the depth and sophistication and like the number of dots that get connected. And so one day I was like, wow, this is so comprehensive. It's like psychology meets physiology meets biology meets physical anatomy meets energy anatomy. I was like, they should call it like the science of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And literally my mind was like, yeah, they do.
Biology, yeah, I guess that's what it's the science of life. Or like, yeah.
Yeah. And so it just kind of hit me that that's what it is. It's like if you were an alien and you were looking at life forms on this planet and you were drawing out like what are the universal laws that govern all of the life forms down there on this planet. That's what the medical science of Ayurveda is based upon. And so in the same way that you said like gravity doesn't care if you believe in gravity or not, technically, Ayurveda is the same way. It has no opinions. It doesn't care what you eat. There's no such thing as good for you, bad for you, good or evil in Ayurveda. It simply says that all things have certain qualities, and those qualities affect the body in specific ways. And so we can use those qualities to bring ourselves into balance and improve our health, or those qualities can essentially create negative feedback loops, which are what cause disease.
Yeah, and it's a way to understand those paths and those journeys and seeing those patterns and kind of sharing that knowledge so we can make wiser decisions, right?
1000%, if that's what you choose to do with the knowledge.
Exactly. I love that. I love how that concept of the non-dualism of good or bad kind of, like, I like how you brought that into it. It's like you're observing and you can get to the evaluation later, but you're observing that it is.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. So that came up during a workshop. A buddy of mine, I mentioned the word God, right? Because I personally believe in God. And so I mentioned the word God in an Ayurveda workshop, and this one girl, she just wasn't having it, right? And so she started calling Ayurveda a religion. And she kept saying, like, she was talking to me, and she was like, well, this religion that you have. And I would say, look, Ayurveda is not a religion. And she was like, yeah. And like, she called it a religion again. I was like, it's not a religion, right? And so we went back and forth for a little bit. And it wasn't until years later that it actually hit me that that is what you just said. That's the fundamental difference. Religion is like, hey, this is good, this is bad. Religion is like, okay, what should I do with my life?
What's the dogma?
Good and evil. Yeah, but Ayurveda, there's no good and evil. There's just qualities.
Sounds like the flow to me. Like, I use that word a lot, the flow, and I feel like a lot of people in different religion dogmas all over the world spend a lot of time praying to be in the flow. Mm-hmm. I think that it's important when you find yourself in, that feel of flowing, that you just have a lot of gratitude, and then it'll keep flowing. And when it's not flowing, you don't get all like upset. Just be like, okay, how can I get rebalanced? And there's so many tools, and this nest is full of these tools. So I'm fascinated by herbs. I've been studying them for a long time, and I'm fascinated even just by the seasons of the time period we live in, that I can be in Indiana studying like Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicinal herbs and the local fauna and the ethnobotanical resources we have on that. And sometimes it's almost overwhelmingly too much. For you, do you feel like you've kind of like had this focus on Ayurveda, but are accessing information from all these other resources simultaneously? But does it feel good to have like a foundation like that? I guess is what I'm...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just like why we teach kids multiplication tables. We teach kids math, addition, subtraction, and multiplication, and then they can use that their entire life, whatever they get into, whether it's building a house, whether it's investing, whatever it is, you can use math in anything that you want to, and that's exactly what Ayurveda is. It has those fundamental laws, and so exactly like you said, right? I love learning. There is no end to the amount of learning that is available, and I love learning it, and I know the math. You can always bring it down, which just makes it so tremendously helpful.
Yeah. Beautiful. So where can people find you, connect with you?
So we have a clinic on the south side of Indianapolis, if you're local. So the company is called Balanced Alignment Ayurveda. It's a nice short name. The website is nice and short. It's also balancedalignmentayurveda.com.
Cool. Yeah, you'll see some footnotes there in the bottom if you want a quick link, listeners.
Great. Hey, you know what? As a plug, we're actually having an open house in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so if you're here in Indianapolis, we're going to have a full-on open house. We're going to have a ribbon cutting. We're going to serve lunch. It's going to be pretty sweet.
That's amazing. I hope I can get this show out before then, but if not, know that it's open.
Yeah, that's right.
So we have another guest that just sat down here with us. How you doing, sir?
Good, sir. How you doing?
Feel good?
Yes, sir.
Nice. You want to introduce it? I mean, I know you're somebody that wants to pop in here because Karen Lynn brought you over to the table.
Yeah, I didn't know I was
smile.
doing this, so it was spontaneous.
His old karate instructor.
This is Olson's karate instructor?
But he lives, I guess. Okay, so I brought Shihan Mark in because he lives his life like we do, and I'm going to let him tell you all about it and what he does with his students.
All right. Yes, like Miss Karen said, my name is Mark Kruzeman. I have my own place here in Southside in Greenwood here. Been here about 15 years. I've been training martial arts for 39 years. So I'm older than what I look. But we deal with a lot of kids.
You look like you're like 14 maybe?
14.
You're 15?
Yes, sir. 14. No, I'm 54, but I've been doing martial arts most of my life.
Mark his words.
Mark my words. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And just like Miss Karen said, I was a former instructor for Olson a little while ago, several years ago. But we focus a lot on kids, but it's more than just the we always say punching and kicking. We also teach. We use the martial arts as a vehicle to teach life lessons. So it goes way beyond just the we do self-defense, things like that. But we're all teaching them about respect, self-confidence, discipline, everything that you hear about martial arts, what it does for kids. We have missions that we do for them to help live their best life. Some of it has to do with healthy eating, exercise, mental health, things like that you hear a lot nowadays. So we implement that all into our program. So it is a requirement that we do have our kids do in order for them to advance forward. So it's not just memorizing a bunch of movements. It goes beyond that, and they had to set goals throughout their course of training as long as they're with us.
I like it.
So we try to have a holistic approach about it, not just going in there and learning movements.
Can you give an example of the mental health thing that you said? Like, what do you have the kids do?
We
like
do meditation. We start our class with meditation, breathing, affirmations, things of that sort.
Really good. Yeah.
So we try to implement that.
I feel like you're helping children learn how to put themselves in their bodies.
Yes, sir.
And be their selves inside there and be confident with it. That's amazing
right.
work. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And it's part of the liberation, I definitely see that. Like, I feel like a lot of what you're sharing, I feel like foraging is definitely a huge aspect of that I feel I've brought to children, and I feel like that's something that it sounds like you're bringing it into, touching upon it, and I think that's that's liberation, when you can feel your own body and tune into it, like learning what our instincts are, and more I feel there's more disconnect from that in
Yes,
our,
sir.
That's amazing work, and you're doing something wonderful. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to bring in people like yourselves, Karen, like that, to bring in another resource to educate my families. I even reached out to Karen just recently about that.
Yeah. Community here. I mean, this community here feels like it's full of amazing resources. You could probably do a one-day session over in the parking lot here, and then run through and meet some amazing mentors.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So I want to bring that to my families, and bring something very special. We need more than anything in this world, and if any place that's going to be holistic, I want our place to be that for the kids. Because, our kids and families deserve that and need that. So it's important to me, and I try to live a very healthy lifestyle. At age 15, I cut out all fast food, pop, all those things.
Boom.
You're a pioneer.
Yeah, absolutely. I started, and it's paid off.
Yeah.
I feel great. I move pretty good for my age.
What was the last fast food experience that you had? Do you remember?
Age 15.
What was it though? You don't have to totally give us a brand.
Maybe McDonald's.
Yeah, something like that.
Something
okay.
like that back then. But no, I cut all that stuff out.
Yeah.
So it's a journey that I started early, and I'm very grateful that at that age, at 15, as a teenager, which is very hard to do, I did it.
I'm so curious that time period, 13 to 15. I've been hearing this in so many people's lives as being like some pivotal parts of their life, right? Like, what inspired you as a young person?
Definitely Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris.
Don't they eat McDonald's?
I don't know.
I'm just messing.
Bruce Lee was the epitome of fitness.
Bruce Lee is my hero.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd say Bruce Lee more than anybody.
Okay.
He would eat, sleep, and breathe, fitness and things like that. So he was my inspiration. I bought books on him, and just something to connect with martial arts and health at that age just hit me at a young age, and I'm very grateful I was able to do that.
Yeah.
So now I'm passing that on to my kid, my students.
So have you been in martial? Has that been your main career your whole life?
Not my whole life, but it has been for the 15 years. I got out of corporate America. I was tired of it, burned out, and
Tired of sparring with corporate America?
There you go. Yes, great way to put it.
Yeah.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me when I got laid off. In 2008. and I've been going ever since.
Why is that the best thing? Because you got tapped
I get
into
to
your
live my
creative
dream.
life and
Yes, sir.
step into your body and be in it. Yeah.
That's right. I went full force, Was it scary? Yeah, it was. But that's anything worthwhile. It's going to be scary, when you jump in there and tackle it, So it was the best I ever done. So yeah, I'm so happy that I'm still doing it, So no regrets.
For audio listeners, what is something that you would share with us from your experience with martial arts that, could be something you could share with us to help us bring us back into our bodies?
Martial arts experience? Man, I mean, it offers so much to people. You get out of it what you put into it, and when you step onto the mat, and the mat can be anywhere, but when you're in that special place known as a dojo, it brings that spirit, and that element of just embodying what you're there for. You're there to sharpen yourself inside and out. It's something that you have to experience as a person to do. I can sit here all day and talk to you about it, but until you experience yourself, you'll know. But until then, it's just a spiritual thing when you're in there. When you're in there and learning and growing, and what's really nice when you see the kids' growth. Mm-hmm. That's what amazes me the most. When I see a kid's confidence goes from here to here, level 1, level 5, level 10. You will get kiddos like when you step on the mat, they're so scared, and it just takes time to develop that spirit and that energy and that confidence, nurturing them, and educating the parents too. It's not just the kids; it's educating the parents, and it's all about it's a journey. It takes patience and growth. But when I see that makes my day, and I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Beautiful.
So that's no regrets. And I think I always say it's for anybody, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
It is a commitment. It does take dedication and time, just like your guys' practice. It takes time, and you got to be patient with it. But in the long run, it's worth it. I know it's done for me. Without martial arts, I wouldn't be the person who I am. I'm not very. I give my respects to my parents. I'm youngest of 7 kids, and so I give them respect as well.
Hey,
but martial arts is
now I see where you got your original training. Six older siblings. I mean.
Yeah. I'm the youngest of 7, so
had to hold your space. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So it offers a lot for people. People need to be educated.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled that I was asked to be on this podcast. I wasn't expecting that, so
hey,
it's awesome.
The unexpected sometimes are the coolest things.
It's the best
right?
thing, yeah.
Surprise!
No time for prepare. You just go out and do your thing.
You just walk in and they lead you over to the table and put you in front of a microphone.
Yeah.
That's how yep.
Just like on the street, you don't know what to expect until something happens, and hopefully that happens.
Yeah, I like adaptations, and like
adapt and overcome.
Yeah. Evolving, not revolving. I always hear about this like excitement for the revolution.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, they already did that. That's why it's like it's a revolution. It goes around and around in a circle. Like I want to evolve and to adapt into new things. And
that's what makes life interesting.
Yeah.
So
appreciate you so much.
Well, thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it. That's mean all of you.
This is Daryl and Kara with us.
Daryl?
Yes.
Yeah, Daryl's an Ayurvedic practitioner, and Kara's a therapist.
Yeah.
What kind of therapist?
So I do mental health therapy, specialize in trauma. I also am really passionate about holistic health, particularly plant medicine and how that can help us heal. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, I'm gonna have to get your information so I can have you guys do something for our place. So.
Yeah, I'm giving out free Wake the Farm Up stickers in here today. They're usually $500 each, so just think about the savings that you could have here.
Awesome, what a deal.
And you could use it to like buy some really cool stuff from this Wildfood raw bar over here.
All right.
I got one for you too.
Thanks.
This is my youngest.
Nice.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, Mark.
All right, thank you.
Hey, would you mind any like connections there?
yeah.
Like, I'll put them into footnotes. People check it out.
I'd like to hear more about you.
Yeah. So, anything in particular?
Yeah. So I feel like I meet a lot of people who are into something. Like you said, you're a
Yes.
therapist, yeah. And so like there's kind of this big network of like, okay, this has to do with health, and they have a passion for holistic health.
Yes.
And so I'm curious how you want to integrate holistic health into your practice, / where do you feel it's the most important? What need do you see in your therapy practice that leads you in that direction?
I think it's been through my own journey of doing my own work that I've seen the incredible importance, right? Because when I started out working in a state hospital with probably the most severe cases and very much Western medicine, right? We put a label on it. We do, a variety of pharmaceuticals and then some more pharmaceuticals to address the problems that those pharmaceuticals have, right? And I saw that. And in my own life, right? Like I struggled with depression and anxiety, and I lived that too. And there was a point, I think during the pandemic, it woke a lot of us up, and I'm like, I started taking my own power back, and how can I live a healthier life, and what does that look like for me? And in doing that, I've learned the importance of energy work and holistic health and those kinds of things. And we don't want to hear how our food makes us sick, right? We don't want to hear how the sugar and how the alcohol that we're so accustomed to and that we like, how it impacts our health and our mental health. We don't want to talk about how we're disconnected from ourselves because we've been so programmed like that, right? I heard the gentleman talking about what he was teaching in the dojo, and we've become as a society, we've been taught to shove our feelings down, and we don't feel that, and we're so disconnected from our body, and it makes us sick physically, it makes us sick mentally, and I move away from the attachment of labels, and let's treat this diagnosis, and let's give you a pill to like, what is the root cause here, and how can we help you live a healthier life, incorporating your whole self.
Absolutely. So I'm so glad you brought that up because you're right. There is a sensitivity to talking about food, right? Because when we're talking about standard American diet, well, that's what most people are eating. So it's a sensitive subject to dive into like, hey, like this is non-helpful. I think the distinction that like I like to draw, and one of the things that kind of like tugs at my heart and makes me want to talk about it and share it is that it's not the result of free market trade of ideas and things. It is the result of governmental programs and initiatives and them taking our money and spending it for us, and like it's very corrupt.
Yes.
And there's a lot of lies that are going on, and it feels like it's not about criticizing the person. Like we're all human beings, we're all doing the best that we can, and we grew up here in America. Like you think I didn't grow up eating Taco Bell? Like you think I haven't eaten so many bacon chalupas in my life? I used to live off of those things.
Yeah.
And yes, they're delicious, but
2 in the morning.
There's a very sinister lie underneath it. We're not being told what's really happening with the food, and it is toxic.
Yeah, I lived in Europe for 4 months when I was in school, and seeing how they lived, it still impacts me, right? Like the chemicals that we consume in our food and water and whatever that looks like, right? And how they're illegal there, right? They don't allow it, and we're consuming that on a daily basis, and we wonder why we're so sick. Yeah.
They have to prove that something is safe before they can use it. We allow people to use anything, and they have to prove that it's not safe before we take it away.
I thought you just had to like pay somebody money to have them say that it's safe. It's kind of like
that's
I don't know.
also
There's
part of
this
it.
piece I'm working on right now. It's not totally developed, but it fits right here. Like there's the Clean Water Act. There's the Clean Air Act. it's like that's how like our government works. Really, is it? I know there's more to it than that, but it's funny to think that like it's like yeah, let's decide that it's clean and just act like it.
I see what you're saying.
Well, it goes, we were talking before the podcast began about, certain plant medicines and legality, and who said that was unsafe and why?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why is it really unsafe? Unsafe for who?
So that has like angered me throughout my practice.
Yeah.
Is that so? Just like you said, these pharmaceutical drugs that are making people sick, that are making people's health worse. That's we use the word medicine for that, which is totally crazy. Whereas Ayurvedic herbs or food that I can offer my clients that actually heals them, that is actually a real medicine. According to the government, it's illegal for me to call it a medicine.
Right. It's wild.
So backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, the words they always change around, and that's where we got to find all the little loopholes in the innovation constantly, and figure out what can I call it.
Right. If you're dealing
with my free speech.
Right. Okay, so that isn't that interesting? We're supposed to have the right to free speech, but you're not allowed to say the word medicine. So this is interesting. I'll share something with you guys. This has been my journey this year in 2024. Have you guys heard of PMAs? You're a farmer, right?
PMAs?
PMAs.
What's that stand for?
It stands for Private Membership Association.
Okay,
so PMAs, Private Membership Associations, are basically clubs that you make in private. So it's basically, so like you're a farmer, right? And you have a bunch of chickens and you want to sell your eggs. The government makes it very difficult for you to sell your eggs. They put a bunch of regulations on you. They tax you. They make it expensive. They make it hard. They make you store it somewhere else other than at your farm. All
with
this
plastic.
stuff.
You got to wrap it in plastic.
Yeah, you got to wrap it in plastic. Yeah, you got to make it a little more toxic
yeah.
before you can sell it to the public.
Yeah.
And so farmers are
Make
getting
sure it's
into
refrigerated too, so it doesn't
Right.
have the self-protective
Yep.
coating. Yeah.
all of that. So farmers are getting into PMAs, these private membership associations, which is basically just, I have a farm, I want to sell you my eggs. You're like, cool, I want to buy your eggs. You join my little PMA, and boom, we can do that. And so when it says private membership associations, it doesn't just mean like how we think of the word private, it's a legal term. So as it turns out, there are two domains of law in this country. There is the public domain of law, which is what you're used to, the health department, the police department, and there is the private domain of law. And so that's why when you're out on the street, a police officer can come up and talk to you and ask you questions because he has a duty and responsibility to serve and protect the public. But a police officer cannot walk into your home. Right? Because that's the private domain. He can't even open your car door because that's the private domain. And so apparently that's an entire domain of law in this country. It's like constitutional law or common law. And that's where all of our like rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, all of that stuff actually exist.
That's wild. I had no idea.
You down with PMAs?
Yes, sir. So that got me going down the rabbit hole. And this year, I actually dissolved my LLCs because I had like 8 of them. I dissolved all of them, and I established an unincorporated medical church ministry operating in the private domain of law. And so just like you can make an LLC in the public domain, you can make organizations in the private domain. And so we built that, and so that's what gives us the full freedom to practice medicine. We can call it medicine, we can practice medicine. We're not under threat from the AMA and from the government.
I've seen that in the plant medicine space where we have ayahuasca churches and medicine, and I've been really interested in that because I know the healing power in that, and I'm so glad you brought that up. It's incredible.
Yes, it is. Yes, so here's what's cool, Karen. It's funny that you're here. I've been meaning to talk to you about this. So within that jurisdiction that we made, so it's really simple, right? So you just become a member, right? So you join that PMA. So like once you're in the club, you can interact as a free person. And so within that club, not only can you interact with us, you can interact with other members. So we're in the process of creating a platform for like a community ecosystem where you and anybody else who wants to provide goods and services can do so within that umbrella, and we can all interact freely, tax-free,
Yes.
and as free as you want. You know, it's good old-fashioned free enterprise.
My big question though, if you become a member, do you get like a patch or anything?
You want a patch?
I love
Stickers.
patches.
Heck yeah, we'll make you a patch.
Membership patch. You know, they always give you cards anymore. Like, you want your membership card? I'm like, I don't got enough cards.
So when you
Like,
say patch,
I
you
want a
mean
patch.
you want something to sew on your clothes?
I
That
mean,
kind of patch?
yeah, I mean, it's like maybe Velcro, and then you can put it on different outfits, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Done.
There's ideas, you know?
Done.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple extra stickers just to remind you from that, Daryl.
I mean, I'm gonna invest in these. Put these in my Roth, right?
Well, I'm back. I brought my friend Taylor. I know, that sounds amazing. I brought my friend Taylor. She's another clinical herbalist, and she's here. She's going to tell you all about herself.
Awesome.
Hi guys,
Welcome,
I'm coming
Taylor.
to crash your party here.
Hey, we like parties that are crashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially by herbalists. I mean, what's up?
Yeah. Well, I'm a clinical herbalist. I've known Karen for several years now. We really, I am passionate about women's health. So I went to a school called Bastyr University where they actually teach the naturopathic doctors. But I got a degree in herbal science. And what I've done with that is I specialize in women's health, hormones, endometriosis, and fertility. I would say that endometriosis and fertility are really my jam.
Amazing.
Yeah, and
What
that
was
really.
that first word? Indi what?
What was that?
Indeciosis?
Endometriosis.
Oh, endometriosis.
Endometriosis.
Yeah.
I love that word.
Big word. Yeah. Endometriosis is a really common women's health condition where it affects, we commonly know it as painful periods, but it's actually a chronic inflammatory whole body disease. And that's where I think, I'm very passionate because people have a misunderstanding that this is not just a bad period. It's actually a disease that affects you every single day. So, yeah, I work with a lot of women doing that.
Do you feel that, have you seen that with different diets and things like that? Women will have completely different periods and that what they're used to having and have more pain-free experiences?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in general, we try to promote an approach of an anti-inflammatory diet, removing all the toxins from foods, more plant-centric, trying to get that inflammation load down because that's what you're working with that chronic disease. So absolutely, yeah. I wouldn't say it can be completely managed through diet, but diet is a big piece.
I remember when I was I did raw food cleanse for like 3.5 years. That's a pretty long time. It was fun, so I couldn't stop. But I met a lot of other people along the way that were into raw foods, and there was a lot of ladies that said that they quit having their cycle periods, but I guess they were still having their cycle, but not painful, and there wasn't blood, and there was different situation than they had ever experienced before, and they seemed like they liked it. Some of them seemed confused by it because there's only so much information that we can collect on all these things, but...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, what's that quote? Eat food, not too much, mostly plants.
I like
that's
that.
my motto.
I love it.
Yeah, Michael Pollan, I think that's who said that. Yeah. Are you still raw?
No, I still eat a lot of things raw, and it's just like easy to like go and make a smoothie and find, I'm not really thinking about it too hard. It's just kind of in the foraging too. I find most of what I'm eating is just like while I'm walking around doing other things, I'll have whole entire meals of mouthfuls of things. And
Yeah. It's funny. I tried that diet when I was in college, and I made this phenomenal like raw lasagna with all like these super fancy expensive ingredients, and I dropped it in the sink.
like
I
a sink full.
never I quit raw right then and there. That is too expensive. I can't keep doing this. But yeah.
I remember family members telling me that they wanted to eat noise-free food because I was always using blenders and stuff. I made you guys some soup.
Yeah. You definitely are like you have to be like a messy kitchen, explorer to be able to eat healthy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I feel like I have come up with a lot of shortcuts for myself, like I would have the little wheatgrass juicer, and I would juice wheatgrass. And then I eventually learned I didn't have to grow or buy wheatgrass, and that it was there's more minerals in a mulberry tree leaf.
Oh.
So you could use the same
Yeah.
little machine. But then over time, it just even got even more simpler. It's like my teeth are juicers. I can just chew on this stuff and juice it, and there's no dishes.
Yeah.
I do think about dishes a lot, like imagining that time period in humans' existence when we didn't have dishes yet, and that that first dish that was made. The people in the community were like, "I want to do the dish tonight."
Yeah. I think we have a way of complicating healthy food, and it does add to the dishes. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, in clinical herbology, what is the scientific process? Zoom me into your mindset. When a client comes to you and they have issues, what are you figuring out, and then how do you bring in the appropriate herbs for that person?
Oh my
Love
God,
that.
it's so
Great.
complicated.
Yeah.
Because, my training is not just, I learned the traditional herbalism, right? So we're looking at the energetics of the herbs. Like, for example, ginger is a warming herb. So a lot of women tend to be cold. So we might pull in an herb like ginger. That's an energetic piece. So a lot of traditional herbalists, we're looking at that. We're looking at traditional uses of plants, and we're looking at, energetics. But then we also have the scientific evidence-based piece of it as well, where we're looking at labs and we're looking at symptoms, and we're trying to understand the disease process and work with it from both angles. So I meet somewhere in the middle of both of those aspects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we talk about energetics, heating and cooling, that makes sense to me. Are there more energetics?
Oh, yeah. Dry and wet. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there more?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. So that's really close to allopathy. Yes?
Well, allopathy in what sense? Because allopathy is typically seen as Western, correct?
Yeah, so that's a common thing where people will refer to modern medicine as allopathic medicine, although really that would be complimenting them in a way that they don't deserve. Allopathic medicine is what Hippocrates practiced.
Oh, okay.
And so allopathic medicine is the understanding that they have 3 biological humors in the body.
Yeah,
They called
absolutely.
it, wind, bile, and phlegm.
Yep.
And that was a lot about heating and cooling aspects
Right.
of the body, and damp versus
Yep.
dry,
Yep.
and hot and cold. Yeah, so that's allopathy.
Interesting. I've never heard it called that. You probably have more of a rooted understanding of the historical context of that word. But yeah, yes, I would say yes. We were taught different aspects. I think herbal education is a really good blend of, they'll give you the Chinese perspective, they'll give you the Indian perspective. We learn the humoral perspective. We got it all, and then you kind of have to decide what are bases of knowledge you're going to pull from. And so I've kind of honed in on a specific method of where I think it meets in the middle to get the best outcomes for people. And everybody's going to have a different perspective. Karen practices differently than I do, and she still gets results. So.
Ayurveda is the same way.
Yep.
So if you go see 10 different Ayurvedic physicians, they'll give you 10 different protocols. Because there are multiple ways to climb to the top of a mountain.
Totally. And I don't think one is always the answer. Yeah, absolutely.
I think my first herbalist teacher that really worked with, Rebecca Wood over at Hawking College, that was the first day of the class. She said cross-reference everything. Gave us the real simple example. One book will say that poison ivy is poisonous. Another book will point out how it's used to treat, TMJ in homeopathic,
Right.
a remedy made from it. And there's digitalis, the foxglove, it's often
Right.
listed in books as being poisonous, but there is a specific way that you can take digitalis that can stimulate your heart so people stay alive. I've even heard stories from my mom when she was a little girl. She remembered a guy in her neighborhood that everybody had to know they would give him a digitalis tablet if they found him laying on the ground. He would have them on him, which is very fascinating to me. You don't hear about that used at all anymore, and
Right.
that's not
Yeah.
that long ago.
There's not many herbalists out there that have the guts to go to the toxic low-dose herbs these days, but there are some.
To go to the what?
The toxic low-dose herbs. So digitalis is what we call a low-dose herb.
Okay.
It has specific benefits in a range of dosage, but outside of that, it could kill you.
Got it.
But, phenomenal medicine if you're trained well.
And you love how like we're exploring words too. Like I noticed how Taylor said low dose herbs, because if you would have said micro dose, that would have like brought us to a whole different place of thought. And, yeah.
You know what? Even when you said it the second time, I heard like low dose as in like LODOS, like pathos, ethos. I was like, ooh, what does that mean? Yeah, okay, low dose, right, because it's high potency and got it, right. So that makes perfect sense, according to Ayurveda.
Yeah. You have a familiarity with Ayurveda?
I do, I'm an Ayurvedic physician.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Hey, this is Daryl. Yeah, this is Daryl.
That's
Welcome.
so cool.
Yeah, Taylor just stepped in. You audio listeners, you already know.
Yeah. We've been chatting for 20 minutes at this point, 30
I
minutes.
am curious, Daryl, is that like, do you have ancestral background in India?
I do not.
Okay, you do have, like, what is your ancestral background?
Yeah, people think I'm Indian all
I
the
was just
time.
curious.
Especially
No worries, man, no worries.
when I go to India, I mean, people just run up to me and start speaking Sanskrit. There's actually this hilarious story. I went to the Taj Mahal with my friends and my family, and they thought I was their tour guide. So they were giving me all of these instructions. And I was like, no, I'm one of the tourists. Like, I'm with them.
Hey, that's what happened to me in Hawaii. Strange thing. I was there for 3 days, and I had probably 10 different people asking me at the farmer's market directions to places. I'm
Really?
like, I don't know.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You look
I looked
Hawaiian. You've
local
got
there.
the culture,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
vibe, everything. I went to school in Hawaii.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Is that where the Ayurvedic schooling
No,
was? Or that was-
no. So
Copy that.
Ayurveda came into my life in a way that only God puts things into your life. I was actually a professional poker player out of college. That was...
Wow.
Yeah, that was my first dream. I fell in love with poker, and so to make that story quick, I dropped out of college and moved to Las Vegas and pursued my dream of playing professional poker. And so that's what I did. I mean, I did that for 9 or 10 years. Like, that was my career. And it was just during that time that I got introduced to yoga and Ayurveda, and I thought they were both totally awesome. First, I fell in love with yoga. I was like, guys, this is the greatest thing on the planet.
In Vegas, huh?
So I moved back to Indy.
Oh, okay.
I lived in Vegas for about 5 years and then came back to Indy. Was playing poker here. Yeah, and then I fell in love with Ayurveda. And I remember I had to remind myself, I loved Ayurveda so much, I had to remind myself that, dude, like, you love yoga too. Like, don't forget about yoga. Like, it's not all about Ayurveda. And that's basically what happened. I fell in love with Ayurveda because I thought it was the most fascinating thing on the planet. It connected dots in ways that apparently my soul was just craving.
Hungry.
So I studied Ayurveda for 5 years purely for fun. I never intended to practice medicine. I never intended to do anything with it. I was playing poker. My life was good. And then that just kind of evolved into a calling. So I felt called to establish a practice. So then I got a formal education with the Kerala Ayurveda Academy and started my practice about 4 years ago.
Amazing.
That's how a lot of us start on this path, is like you just feel a really strong calling and there's like no pulling you away from it. And that's how I felt about herb school. It's like, I am going to Seattle and I'm getting this done. You can't stop me.
So you went to, Taylor, you went to a herb school in Seattle. Which herb school was that?
It's called Bastyr University. It was a naturopathic medical school, and they had undergraduate programs. So I got a bachelor's in herbal science there.
Yeah,
So,
you were saying that. Herbal science, I love that.
Yeah, herbal science.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of a jumping off point. Like, so you could have taken that and like gone the clinical route like I went, but then I know, like, I have classmates that went into like labs, they have PhDs now in like drug development, and, they took it all different directions. So
Fascinating.
yeah. And we had Ayurveda classes, of course. Amazing.
So
That's amazing that you got to have such a
Diverse.
institutionalized like education
Yeah.
system, but in actual medicine.
Rooted in real
Real
true
stuff.
naturopathic philosophy, and they exposed you to a diverse array of thinking too. It was really cool to see these old school naturopaths, like not what we would call green allopathy these days, like true old school naturopaths giving us education. So yeah, I miss it.
Do you feel like there's I'm curious, probably a question for all three of you here, like doing clinical kind of work where you're getting to sit down with individuals and work with them, that the only experience I guess I have in that is going to somebody's land and offering permaculture consultation, which like I feel like I'm giving clinical like service to the land and trying to be that vessel that helps people to remember what they want to do with the land is cool, but like, let's check out what the land wants to do with them too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious about that. I've been studying herbs for decades, and I still don't have, like, in my flow anyway, like, a sense that I would feel confident, I guess, even like telling other people what to eat or take, you know, because there's so much variabilities in people and their backgrounds, and then you get into insurance and people in our modern day wanting to blame each other for this. It's like I just kind of step back. I want to hear like how that experience has been for you guys.
Are you asking about the legality of making
I mean,
recommendations?
not so much, but like I feel you guys have that, like, I mean, Daryl's given his purpose story, you know, that like with so much passion. I feel like there's a lot of passion right here at the table. And how did you get to where you were comfortable and you trained yourself to be able to feel comfortable that you're channeling in the correct things for these people?
That's a good question. It's a lot of practice.
Yeah, so I can add to it, you know, like, so when you first do anything, it's hard. You know, the first client I saw, I was nervous. And, you know, that lasts for a while. And that's just how it works. Like, you go and you get trained in something. And so at some point in time, you have to say, I am capable of doing this, and I've never done it.
Yeah, totally.
Right? But you don't have to tell your client that you've never done it. And so you put yourself out there. And so it is an act of courage and it is an act of faith. The beauty in these modalities is that you're backed. You know, you're backed by a science of medicine that people have been practicing for literally thousands of years.
Yeah.
And another thing, when you're working with natural medicines like herbs or foods or diet, lifestyle, even yoga therapy, even like, you know, talk therapy, behavioral therapy, just like you said that you are consulting the ground, like, you know, that's the external environment. We're doing the exact same thing for the internal environment. And so even when we make mistakes, which we do, the body lets us know in a way that doesn't kill the person like a pharmaceutical. And it actually is part of the process. It's part of the learning. Like, you know, a real practice of medicine, it's called an art and science of medicine, and it's called a practice of medicine because the answers are not obvious. In Ayurveda, it's called anupashaya and what is it? Is it anupashaya and apashaya? There are a couple of words for it. Basically, what it means is what works and what doesn't work. You know, you learn the person over time. The more you learn how they respond to certain things, the more you hone in to find out exactly what they need. And the best part is that you're not making the decisions. You are offering things to their intelligence, to their bodily intelligence. Yeah. Right, you know, so.
I feel that you're like offering kind of, so like as we explore our passions and go down these like dendritic patterns of quests of knowledge, you know, where we have a question and it goes to the next one and the next one. You're sitting with these people and kind of helping guide them to some of these places really quick that you may have already been and offering that. Makes sense.
100%. And that is one of the favorite things about my practice is that I get to watch people heal themselves.
Yeah.
I am not healing anybody. They heal themselves. It's so awesome.
I'm even feeling that this guy throws on his poker face sometimes. It's just like,
That's part of the medicine too.
Yeah, I've actually been trying to release my poker face for a long time. I want people to know what I'm thinking.
I have heard they've like done a lot of science advancement in exploring the placebo effect. I don't know, for some reason the poker face, you know, came to mind with the placebo effect. It's like, you're going to be fine. But meanwhile, your cards are like looking like, I don't know, man.
Like, I'm not sure where this is going to end up. Yeah.
That sounds potentially unethical.
Totally. Yeah, well, I can joke about it. You can't.
Yeah.
I feel like that
Good
dance
point.
for me is a little different because of the medicine that I choose to work with is still, despite the fact that it grows from the ground and our ancestors used it, it's still illegal in most places. So that dance for me is a little different. But But in therapy in general, I take a very person-centered approach, much like you, right? Like they're healing themselves. I'm here as a guide, like you're the expert of you, and let me help you connect back to yourself, whether that's using plant medicine or not. Let me help you connect back to yourself and get you into a place where you're empowered and you recognize that you have more power and control than you really realize.
Beautiful.
What plants are you working with? I know I must have missed that.
So specifically, psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah, we didn't dive into that quite yet, so I'm really curious.
We haven't gotten too far into that, but that's, you talked about, that being your calling, and it was a calling when I didn't even recognize it. I wanted another tool for my patients and my clients, and I started looking into psychedelic assisted therapy, and the results. I love science, and so when I started down that path, I was very scientific minded, and so I wanted to get training in it. But I was a single mom, and I didn't have the $10,000 to go invest in some of these programs, so I found one that was cheaper. But I had to have sat with a medicine that created an altered state of consciousness at least 3 times before I can be trained, because and I understand the importance of that now, right? You have to understand the medicine that you're working with, and so I was like, how am I gonna get here? And it's like the universe served up this opportunity for me to go and work with someone in Michigan in an area where it was decriminalized, and it was just, there was no turning back after that first experience, and it was incredibly healing for me. And so I've gone beyond those 3 places, right? I've gone beyond those 3 and really seen the medicine work in it, the energy of it, the spirit of the medicine, and how it works differently for each person is just incredible. Yeah.
Wow. How long have you been doing that?
So I, started doing the research in 2021, and I sat with the medicine for the first time in 2022. And I have my own history of health, chronic health conditions, and my first journey was, I want to get these 3 things done so I can go get this training, and I have this thing. And it became, after that first experience, it was, you have your own work to do. You have your own healing to do. And so, I was on probably 7 different pharmaceuticals at the time, and they're gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Clear that out.
Yeah, so it's been pretty phenomenal.
So you work with medicinal mushrooms of that sort.
Yes.
And what are some of the other plants that you've worked with or participated in this kind of?
I've personally microdosed with LSD. It's been a really, for depression especially, and for the lack of motivation you get with depression sometimes, working with that particular medicine has been really incredible. I've also, done work with some non-psychoactive plants like cacao and things like that, and experienced the beauty of those medicines. I'm actually planning to do a plant medicine dieta with Bobinsana. It's supposed to be really a heart-opening medicine that really helps move a lot of grief. And
so the plant is a plant called Bobinsana?
Bobinsana, yes, it's native to
sure.
South America.
Okay.
A lot of South American shamans use it. And so I've been feeling that call for a while now, and so I found a really great source through Four Visions, who has a whole dieta protocol, and part of me was like, I need to find a shaman to help me do this, and then there was the other part of me that reminded myself that I have that in me, that I know my own path, and to create that for myself, and then maybe I can repeat that and lead people in that too. So
Cool.
yeah.
So crazy. Like in school, I actually worked with a professor who, I don't know if you've heard the name Leanna Standish. She has an ayahuasca farm in Hawaii.
Okay.
So we did studies on ayahuasca, the Binistereopsis capiae plant, for, it was actually geared towards clinical trials for a drug for, I think, Parkinson's, if I have that correct. But yeah, it's interesting to see, someone else talking about this.
I feel the pull for that medicine. I feel like I have to find the right practitioner, the right
totally.
setting,
It's very
and I
big.
haven't found it yet, but I know it'll show up when it's time. So,
Yeah.
but I know a lot of people who have found a lot of healing with ayahuasca.
Yeah, that one's a big one. You got to be ready for it.
Yes.
You know what I find fascinating about that psilocybin mushrooms ayahuasca is that it's not the chemicals that create the healing for people. It's the experience.
Yes. Yeah. I was telling him earlier, I don't. I know a lot of people would disagree, but I don't believe in the concept of a bad trip. I've had experiences. Probably most of my experiences when I've journeyed that aren't pleasant, and that they could be perceived as quote unquote bad. And that's where the healing came for me, right? Where I was overcome with intense fear and had to relinquish. And what did that teach me? And then coming out of the other side of that, just with nothing but absolute love and oneness with the world, right? And you're right, it's not the chemical compound. And I see these clinical trials, and not to undermine that, right? I love that they're exploring a different kind of medicine, and they're using an adulterated process of psilocybin, right? It's not from the plant, and I don't think you're going to get the spirit of the medicine without using the plant that has the spirit in it.
I agree.
I think that kind of goes back a little bit, looping earlier when I was talking about how friends of mine were eating tropical foods and they were having dreams of tropical places, and how, I don't know, I keep exploring that concept, you are what you eat. Like, to what degree? Is that real? Is that just a myth? I mean, is it just a myth for a lot of people? Like, I don't know. It's like if you're eating food that's raised in a cubicle, for some reason, like, you find purpose in a cubicle, and it's like, I've seen these patterns. I mean, it's very common, and it's okay. It's just...
Yeah. Well, and if you come in with a closed mind too, right? If it was just the chemical, it would heal everybody, right? And I've sat in circles and I've facilitated circles where people didn't, quote unquote, get anything, and because they came in with such rigidity and they were convinced it wasn't going to work and they weren't open to it working. And so, yeah, it's also your level of openness to allowing something to do its work.
The more you study plants and realize how intelligent they are, you realize that they're actually controlling us on some levels.
Oh my God.
Can we talk about the article
Yes.
that came out about mushrooms controlling a robot?
Controlling
Did
a
you guys
robot?
See that?
No.
I didn't.
I saw that. I did.
I was just like, I mean, you've got to look into all the work that Paul Stamets has done on mushrooms, and like how phenomenally intelligent the mushroom world is, and how it helps the trees. Like when there's a sick and dying tree in the forest, it's the mushroom network in the ground that's telling the stronger trees to give up some of their nutrients, and it's transporting it through the root systems to help support the dying tree. I mean,
It's beautiful.
Wow.
oh my God.
Biological intelligence.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more of your thoughts and experiences with that too. Like, I'm curious, like, there's I don't know, I've been exploring biosymbiosis or biosymbiotics. It's like the signs, like when it's communications between things, it could be simple as like a flower shape that has a scent, and it's like letting the pollinators know that this is the time to come visit. And it's doing that to communicate something so that it can make seeds.
Right.
So it can do its thing and integrate into the flow. But yeah, I feel that like this year I've gotten this real deep experience, like living on my little homestead for 15 years, where I've seen plants like that have grown, and I have an emotional feeling for them, but the experience I'm having even more so now is they have an emotional feeling for me.
Yeah.
Being like this human that has passed by them and different things, and
The more you start talking to them, the more they'll talk to you. It's really interesting. And that's how we learn. People are always like, how did we learn this? Did we just eat things and die? It's like, no, people were really connected to the land. They learned how to communicate with these plants. And if you start opening yourself up to that, you will start seeing it more. And it's not just, it is as simple as sometimes just the colors, or are you familiar all with the doctrine of signatures?
yeah. Tell listeners about that though.
Really, the simplest way to explain it is what a plant looks like it can help heal in the body. So the most simple example is that walnuts look like a brain, and they're phenomenal for brain health. And we see that all across herbalism. We see so many different things that
Nuts,
are
right?
that same way. And that's how the animal kingdom also communicates too. I mean, just in, like you're saying, like the colors, they attract certain animals or insects and bees and things like that to them. So yeah, it's a different way of communicating that we just
but we're doing it all the time. You
We
know,
are doing it
when
all
I
the
walk
time.
past a tree, like if I'm walking past it in a hurry, it feels that. I walk past it and I brush my hands on it to feel the texture of the bark, it feels that. You know, if I walk past it every morning shouting, I don't want to go to my job, it feels that, you know, and it'll respond. It might even drop a branch on your car, you know, just to like slow you down and it thinks it's trying to help you out. Who knows? Like all these interactions are happening, and yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's a language of intuition. And just like any other language, like if you don't use it, you don't speak it very well, and the more you use it, the more sophisticated you become in that language. Because I remember when I started hugging trees. Like I remember the first time, I'm going to put my heart on this tree.
Yeah.
And I put my heart on this tree, and it's like, there's a feeling there. There's a connection there. There's an energetic, literal channel connection that is created. And if you hug that tree for long enough, at least for me, like you start to feel a communication. And it's not a communication in words. It's not like the tree says, like, this is what you want to do with your life or something. But there is a communion there. And just like you said, like people of the past, they were bathing in that. Like their whole life was in that language of intuition with nature. Like the moon, the stars, the sun, the trees, like that was literally their livelihood. They were paying attention with such a ferocity because their lives depended on it.
Totally.
So that intuitive language was just natural to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think about that, like something I'm exploring right now is the time period in which humans started separating the hulls from the grains they eat. It's a funny question, so I had to go dig into it and just like figure out when that time period was and start cross-referencing what else was going on in prehistory. And it is interesting. There was a lot of lack of fiber in the digestion of the grain, you know, the whole food. I do get some things, you know, like walnuts. I want to take the hull off before I try to chew it up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting just to, again, I've been simplifying things. Like, where do I need the grass juicer? You know, when I have my teeth to do that, and it does, you know, good things. And, you know, why do I need to take the hulls off of my amaranth in my garden? I would spend hours trying to take it off. And when I figured out I didn't have to, it provided fiber, and, you know, it like gave me that much more of a harvest from it. So it was like, okay, that's exciting. And I feel better actually having those hulls in there. But, you know, some hulls would probably be really irritating, and I can see it, but maybe we just wouldn't eat as much of that type of grain. I don't know. It's just, I like exploring what did people used to do. You can get lost in that. I also like exploring, like, what are we going to do in the future? I mean, we're talking about studying, like, herbal practices from all over the world. But we also exist in forests that have plants from all over the world now too. And you guys are like talking about like going inside, you know, I'm like looking at the land on the outside, but like, yeah, inside of us, I feel like there is new forests growing as well that didn't exist before. So yeah, we have to like look at these things from the past, but also be like, okay, here we are.
Yeah, totally.
What are some herbs or foods of the future that you guys can think of? Like I don't know, I guess, for example, I think of aronia berry because they already give it to people for radiation sickness. It's a superfood berry, and people aren't commonly eating it that much right now, but I don't know, more people are growing it and using it and understanding it. They probably will.
Okay, so I'm going to put ghee up for the future food. In the future, people will understand the glory of ghee.
The glory of ghee.
I call it the superfood of superfoods. So that'll be there.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that with glee and ghee.
Yeah, why? With glee and ghee. I will gleefully tell you about ghee. So what makes ghee so extraordinary? Are you familiar with ghee? Do you use ghee?
Yeah, I eat ghee every day.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank God.
yeah.
I mean, ghee is the
Ghee
best.
whiz.
Ghee is the best. I have a shirt. Okay, we're not going to talk about that.
So you do have a shirt.
I have a shirt. Yeah. Okay, now we are going to talk about it. It says geek.
Nice. But it's spelled like
It's got
ghee.
like the
Yeah.
definition underneath it. Like, what is a geek?
Nerd.
It says someone who is First, it says someone who is an expert in ghee and someone who is overly passionate and enthusiastic about ghee. So that's one of my favorite shirts. Ghee rocks because in Ayurveda and yoga, it's known as a yoga vahi. So yoga means union, yeah, and vahi means like vehicle or carrier. And so ghee just happens to be a union carrier of nutrients. So when you cook your food in ghee, all of the life force and nutrient in that food just gets sucked into these beautiful little ghee molecules, and they just hold it there in that like beautiful like lipid. Like if you're thinking healthy fats, like ghee is maybe the healthiest fat on the planet.
I
I
love
just
how you
walked up
describe
with
that.
my ashwagandha roots that I infuse in ghee.
Epic.
Okay. Wait, you're gonna take the roots and take some ghee, and then how do you infuse that into ghee?
I powderize them and then mix them with specific spices and herbs.
Cool.
Based on what each person needs. Totally what Daryl would do.
100%.
We're going to start gardens for Daryl. Ayurvedic garden.
Thank God. Thank God. Well, I'm finally learning that Ayurveda and clinical herbology are basically the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a few more qualities in Ayurveda. We get a little more specific. So we throw in like hot, cold, dry, oily, heavy, light. We use rough, smooth, subtle, gross, hard, soft. So we have a few more qualities. But other than that, it's the same thing, right? Homeostasis is health, and that's what equals balance. The humors are the doshas. They're very, very similar.
Right. Yeah, you guys just have a bit more intricateness with that traditional aspect. Yeah, absolutely. Another thing, I mean, would you say ashwagandha? I mean, it's already become such a popular thing. It's one of my most used herbs. I get so much results with clients with ashwagandha. So, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
How do I feel about ashwagandha?
Yeah, being a food of the future, herb of the future.
I like that. Yeah, back into that. Thanks for looping that, Taylor. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the one gateway herb right now. Like it's one
It
of
brings
those-
people to other
Yeah.
herbs. Okay.
I recommend it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see some
It's true.
stinging nettle leaf at the grocery store. I mean, we finally got some dandelion leaves, but like, come on, bring on
Like
the
fresh
nettle.
ones.
Absolutely.
Like
I was impressed
People
that
are afraid they'll like put their hands
No,
in
maybe
it.
it comes in a bag. I don't know. Or something.
Like people learn real quick what happens when you touch that before buying it. I guess. But
Totally. Yeah, careful, it'll shock you.
Add a little danger into the grocery store.
keep
Well,
on the edge. Have fun.
I think what we're missing is the fact that, nettle grows all around us. It's sustainable. You can find it in the wild. I've never seen spinach in the wild. I'm sure it grows somewhere, but
Some relatives.
And
Yeah.
nettle makes kale and spinach look like lettuce in terms of its nutrient content.
Right.
It blows it out of the water. So, and it's an easy food to cook with. Tastes great.
Right.
Yeah. So I would love to see that, but I don't know if it's coming.
Enter the nettle.
I think it's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, I will tell you, so I did farmer's market for like 13 years, elf background, check, but I used to sell a lot of nettles at markets and things like that, and I'd sell the plants, I'd sell them dried. I found that at a certain point in the winter, I would get notes from a lot of people saying that the big companies like Mountain Rose ran out of nettles, and there's definitely a demand for them. The fluidity of them in our modern economy is maybe not quite what we imagine something like a new product coming into the economy may look like, but we're reimagining things, and it's coming in some way. Somehow it's amazing. It's like, it's a superfood. You can eat it every day. Have you ever met anybody that has had a problem with eating too many nettles? Me either. I haven't, I've tried to eat too many of them. I like to do that. I like to try to eat too much of something to see what happens. Sometimes, do the mono diet thing. You ever get into the mono diet flows where it's like when the peaches are ready, that's all I'm eating for like 3 days, It's a peach cleanse time.
Well, that's how you're supposed to get to know herbs. That's how they teach you in school, is to take one plant at a time, spend all your time with it, spend a whole month with it. So,
Love that. 12 plants a year, real deep. But then they start coming at you real quick. I feel like learning plants has been kind of like, I compare it to like going to a potluck and like say, imagine that you move to a new city and you have a job, and somebody at the job is the only person you know, and they invite you to a potluck, and it's like you go there and you meet like 20 people, and they do that potluck every other week or something. You know, after a year, you know everybody's names. But not only do you know their names, you know how they react when somebody else comes in the room, when something's being served or whatever, you know, just like plants, you know, like over time you get to know all their names, but not just their names, how they interact with each other and with people as medicines, as like
Their personality.
parts of the forest, all the things.
I think of them like people. They have systemic effects in different parts of the body, so you could almost map out this personality of each plant. That's how you get to know them.
That's cool. I love like watching it grow from seed. And like watching a plant grow from seeds, its little sprout phase and all of its little phases, like that's when you know a plant. Like you're not gonna forget that plant when you are there for its entire life cycle.
Right. Yeah.
I like the tree root thing. I was talking about making wheatgrass juice and then compared it to mulberry leaves. And wheatgrass trays, like in little plastic trays, have people that are financially paying money to market that. The mulberry, not quite so much, right? But the mulberry has deep roots. And when you're taking up nutrients from deep in the earth, you're getting something different than you are from a plastic tray. And when you're eating perennials, like if you're eating a pecan from a tree that's 300 years old, compared to even eating a dandelion that's in its first season, you know, you're getting some more information in there. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's that non-worded experience of information that's coming over. And
That's a really good point. I've never thought about that before. That's
what do you
cool.
think about it fresh?
Fresh right off the bat. I mean, I think it makes sense to me. I mean, you said it perfectly. Like the roots are going down deeper. They're accessing a different part of the earth. They're bringing in different part of the minerals, and they're a different part of the network.
The other aspect of this is also you have wild foods versus cultivated foods. And the difference you get is all of those phytochemicals that are great for our health, they're actually part of the plant's immune system. And when the plant is exposed to stress, so drought, wind, heavy rain, etc., it's exposed to stress, and those chemicals are built up as its defense system. And so what you end up with, like wild foods, is a much stronger amount of medicinal and therapeutic compounds. That's why you see like wild blueberries have like 1,000 times more antioxidants than cultivated. It's the same thing with medicinal plants. If you find stuff in the wild, it's different than grown.
I love it.
Intended to perfectly,
I love that.
Yeah.
You know what it also made me think of? How you were talking about I see them as little people. So the older the plant is, perhaps just like we get wiser as we get older, does a plant get wiser as it gets older? Does it get better at healing us?
I think too, like into what I was sharing about my connection with these different plants over years now, that maybe they're like, there's this huge network. We're talking about mushrooms helping move nutrients to trees. What if they're moving nutrients to trees that you're eating from because they picked up in your urine that you peed onto the forest floor that you need more of this nutrient, and they know that you're eating this. So like they're trying to do these things. And you've heard the common herbalist phrase before, Taylor. It's most of the time the herbs that you need are growing right outside your door.
Totally. Yes, I'm sure you've seen the same. Yeah? Just like how amazing they show up. They just show up.
Dandelions.
I had a client who, he had massive heart issues. He had like a quadruple bypass. And when we were talking about this, I was like, oh, you need hawthorn. And he was like, it's funny, when this happened, I lived on Hawthorne Lane, and there was like a hawthorn tree. I was like, stop.
That's real.
Yeah, it is.
It's real.
It's a thing. And I think you might have something to study there, like concept.
I think it's over years I kind of observed this pattern in, on the micro and the macro. You can look at like a whole urban area. What are the invasive weeds that are coming to it? Taking a closer look at what their medicinal properties are. And then you can even go look at statistical numbers in the hospitals in the region and connect like, oh, okay, this region, there's a lot of heart problems, but there's wild garlic coming up. There's like, I don't know, just like red clover, all these blood-building herbs. There's so many things that are offering themselves to make our hearts healthy. And I don't know, it's interesting though. It's like nature's picking up on these things and trying to interact with us because we are part of it.
Right.
Yeah, we just separate ourselves somehow sometimes, and yeah.
Yeah. Coming back to that plants talk to us thing.
Yeah, I like that conversation. So I'll probably go there a few times. I even have a button. I think it's called Plants Talking.
I feel like today, a thematic drive is to carve out a culture where we're tapped back into that.
Yes.
Connected.
And it's like, I don't want to give up the internet. You know, I still want to live my life with a computer. And I also want to walk in the grass and eat the plants that grow next to me.
Yeah.
We're hungry for it, aren't we? That's
Starving.
what I see more and more with it, and myself included, right? I talk to people and you ask what is the herb of the future, and I'm like, the herbs of the past. We are so hungry for the knowledge of our ancestors because we've become so disconnected and we're starved.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think there's a common misconception that in the future people will live longer because there will be like magical medical interventions.
Yeah, you can just
It's
spray
like-
yourself
Yeah,
with
like,
like
no, people are just going to
15-year
remember
spray.
that the ancient ways are the best ways, and that staying connected to nature is how you live the longest.
Isn't that so funny that all these studies are coming out? They're like proving all the things that we've been saying
I
for
know.
like thousands of years. It's like, oh, duh. Like,
That stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Harvard Medical School spends $100 million, and they come back and they're like, guess what, guys? The more time you spend in the forest, the happier you are. Thank you, Harvard Medical School.
what a great way to spend money.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
stamp of approval though, okay. Yeah, we knew.
Yeah, we knew. That was clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that we're in a time of re-remembering a lot of this
Yeah.
and reimagining it. I love that concept still. I keep going to that reimagining word. It's like reimagining the future, and yeah, like there's a lot from the past to get to reimagine from it. Like Indiana, I know only 30% of the people had electricity in the late 1930s, which is less than 100 years ago of human experience. So it's kind of fascinating to just think like reimagining, you know, from the past, there's so much that's so different than what we experience right now.
And that's a good point, too. Like, today, we all grew up now, so, like, it all feels normal, but processed food has only been around for, like, what, 60 years? 70? Like, that just happened.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that's all there is to eat. I heard a stat that said 2/3 of the calories that kids intake in America is ultra-processed food. Like, that's wild.
Right. Yeah. And the correlation of disease with those processed foods that's come, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, it's completely bonkers.
yeah.
Did you guys see the live interview with the great-great-great-great-granddaughter of the Kellogg Corporation?
I
No.
just saw
Did
that
you
pop
see
up.
that?
I didn't watch all of it, but
She's
she was
like,
yeah.
I'm not afraid to lose money. I am the heiress of Kellogg's. She's like, they're corrupt. They need to apologize. They need to get the crap out of our food.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to go listen to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I think she even went into the difference of the way that the composition of the food that Kellogg's produces in America versus in European standards, right? Like just wild.
Yeah. I was even hearing a speech of somebody explaining that like Gatorade in Germany is colored with carrots and like I think she said spirulina or beets or something.
Yeah, I see
like
beets
that.
a lot,
I know. I'm
Yeah.
like, what?
Like, why's my mercury
That's
got to be in
annoying.
Gatorade, you know?
Well, yeah, I lived in Europe for 4 years, or not 4 years, 4 months, and it baffles me that here you have to pay more for less, right? So you have to pay more to have, you know, natural coloring of beets or foods that doesn't have crap in it. There,
I want to know what it costs in Germany.
it's, you know, every grocery store looks like Whole Foods, right? Like it's because it benefits their society to have healthier people.
So you were talking about spending time in Europe. I went to Europe when I was like 25 or 26, before I ever heard of the word Ayurveda. That was back when I was eating Taco Bell. I did not care about health at all. And me and all of my friends immediately noticed that we would eat smaller quantities of food and the energy lasted a lot longer.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I also noticed that I almost had a detox from the red food dye. Like, I'm there and I'm like, I really want some big red gum and Kool-Aid, right? And you can't get it. And I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And I didn't appreciate it at the time. I was in my 20s, but I look back now and I'm like, ooh, like that was some detoxing effect going on from things you're not supposed to be consuming.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people who have said they've gone to Italy where it's a lot cleaner food there, and their food allergies, their gluten allergies, they're just magically gone in Italy.
Wow.
Explain that.
Right?
Yeah.
So I like to feel like I try to go towards pure living and stuff, but I also have had to accept this whole like microplastic era, that it's in everything, it's in me. And I think my holistic approach to heavy metals and plastics and all these like symptoms of our times, or these like aspects of our times, that I need to have some peace with it and allow it to move through me. I think that's the important part for me, is to not let it get stuck onto me or stick onto some emotion I have. When I was doing 3 years of raw food cleanse, I do remember having moments where I'd feel like intense detox. A grieving session of losing my childhood dog was a specific one where I just remember like finding peace with that, and then just like physically stuff left me. And I feel like those were like microplastics and heavy metals and all kinds of different things that were connected on holding on to me. And it's just, how do we let those things move out and let time change and let the earth heal itself? We don't need to make more, but I know we are still.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really affected me for a long time. Probably my mental health.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like when you're mentally walking around like thinking about a lot of the environmental toxins, what's in the foods and this and that, it's heavy.
Sure. I think we all start off that way when we learn about this. We're just pissed off.
What?
A lot of us go to the extreme for a while, but I think we do have to come back to that balance of accepting some level of toxicity, is going to be there, and we are doing enough to balance it out in our other actions. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and have some hope that,
Have some hope.
7 generations, they'll be rolling with something a little sweeter. They'll be like, man, I'm eating too many like jars of ghee.
I would love to see that.
Never.
Right?
It's not possible.
But those were like my problems when I was doing the raw food cleanse. I remember I'd be like feeling my stomach, and I'd be like, so I was probably like 23 to 26. That was like my 20 strange experience, right? But I'd be hearing about my friends having their different like addiction problems, like they're trying to not go to the bar as much or something. And I'm like, dude, I ate too many avocados.
Yeah.
Starting to feel it.
Yeah. Totally.
So I do love that you said that. I so totally agree. Because, the body does have detoxification systems. Like, we can handle small amounts of toxins, and toxins have always been in the environment. And so that's okay. So I 100% agree. I think you're spot on. Peace is more important than mental health. And also, the food matters way more. Like, it's almost a distraction to think about like microplastics. And yes, pesticides are bad, and all the little things are bad. Like, how I feel like it became a fad recently where people think that like parasites are a big problem in their bodies.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, like, it's the food. Like, start at the food.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the main, like, that's literally what you're eating every day.
You know what's crazy is, have you ever seen the, what's it called? The something hypothesis about how parasites are actually part of our natural ecosystem internally, and there are some beneficial parasites, and to the point where I have 2 sisters with Crohn's disease who their naturopathic doctor, who was my former professor at my school, he recommended that they use a certain strain of parasites to actually treat their Crohn's disease. The high success rate, actually. So we have to kind of have a
So
balanced thought
mind-blowing,
about all
right?
this. Yeah.
Cross-reference everything.
Well, they also, they found this hypothesis in looking at other countries that have high loads of parasites, and they're finding that they have lower rates of autoimmune disease. And that's where they started figuring out, wait a minute, there is a balance to this. So, but yeah, I couldn't agree more. There is extremes that we got to be careful with in every direction.
Right. So when
That is
they when these people take like a anti-parasitic herb, do they need to like re-inoculate themselves, or? I'm curious. I have a friend too. She's from India, and since she's been living here, she had to import from her doctor. Her Ayurvedic doctor back in India sent her a certain parasite to help with her digestion here. And I don't. I haven't sat down with her clinically, so I don't fully understand the story. But I'm fascinated by that aspect of using biology as medicine. In certain situations, it's going to help you digest things. I know a lot of people in America have hookworms, and they're not willing to admit it, but it helps them digest the large amounts of factory meats that they are eating. It like goes through there, so they're actually receiving nutrients from worm castings, basically. I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, it's probably not going to lead you towards the healthiest experience, but it'll lead you to something, right? I mean, that's not the non-good or bad kind of aspect.
Right.
I mean, according to Ayurveda, everything natural on this planet has a healing property. Which makes sense. Everything has a property. So, yeah. I mean, if it's natural, you can use it. You can use it to your benefit. It makes perfect sense that certain parasites would be helpful.
Yeah, and you know what? I think people also fail to remember that plants are not just simplistic in how they're healing the body. The herb is not just strictly anti-parasitic. So when you're taking all these anti-parasitic herbs, they may be doing a whole lot of other good things. Those anti-parasitic herbs are great for digestion. They're helping you with detoxification, supporting the liver. They're also antimicrobial. They might be fighting off a totally different bacterial infection you didn't know you had. So to blame it all on parasites, I don't know that we can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, blaming anything on any one single thing when it comes to health makes zero sense at all.
Right. Yeah.
We can blame it on the aliens.
Yeah, let's do that. That's going to take us really far. There's an anti-alien herb.
Here's one of my herbalist jokes. What herb is used to get rid of terrorism? Tarragon.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Hopefully you don't have to use that in your practices.
But we can.
But you can.
No, we
Okay,
consider it. If I
okay,
find a
beautiful.
terrorist on my client list.
Yeah.
So, my friends, it has been a pleasure. This has been super fun. I
Daryl,
need to
thank
get
you
going.
so much for being here.
Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah, real quick, the elves wanted to say thanks too, Daryl. The elves love you, what you're doing, appreciate you, and catch up next time.
Cheers. Cheers.
Let's all give a round of applause for Daryl and like look up his stuff in the footnotes and appreciate you.
Absolutely. Yeah, this has been awesome.
Nice to meet you.
It's so great to meet you. Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey. Yeah, and thank you, Taylor and Kara, for being here as well. This has been so much fun. I love the engaging conversation with all of us.
We've covered a lot of topics here today.
Yeah. I can't believe I've been recording for an hour and 45 minutes at this point.
This is your longest podcast ever.
No. I've had some 3-hour sessions, but I think it might, if I actually go until 5 o'clock, then that would be the longest session.
Wow. We'll see if we can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So will you, I know you told us a little bit about your practice, but you know, before you do head out, like, will you share with us like how people can connect with your practice here in Indianapolis?
yeah, absolutely. So I am entirely virtual based these days, so I can see anybody across the states. So I do one-on-one consultations and then custom formulations, and that's going to cover everything between herbs to supplements, nutrition, lifestyle, etc. It's going to be the whole person approach.
Awesome.
I have a website. It's lionheartedherbals.com.
Lionhearted Herbals.
Lionhearted Herbals, yeah. And I'm on Instagram as well. So Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anything else that you would want to share? Or you're definitely welcome to pop back in at any point today. So
I might do that. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm going to go man my booth.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to check it out. I should take a break
Yeah.
at some point. Yeah. I might go get some of these things from the Wildfood Raw Bar here in Materia Medica, too.